Good evening, everybody. This is Suspect Sky. I'm joined here with Gary. He is the co-creator of a number of videos that we've worked collaboratively together on, including the most recent Mandela Effect. Gary is a part of the Road Less Traveled production company, and he's also a former defense and intelligence operative. So he lends a very interesting perspective on a number of topics that we're all working on. We'd like to discuss very quickly the TR3B patent phenomenon that has exploded on YouTube today, or I guess the past couple days. So an alleged patent claiming that they've designed the TR3B being discovered, and we got a lot of issues with that. So I'm a practicing attorney, so I understand patent law fairly well, and Gary brings in a perspective from the defense and the intelligence community, which is very valuable for this discussion. So Gary, why don't you lead us off here?
Hey, Adrian, thanks so much. It's nice to be here, and I guess we're out of the closet, so to speak, which is maybe a good thing. I think it shows people that we're not a garage band.
Oh, right. No, absolutely. And I mean, there some of these big channels, they lack some of the credibility, I think, that you and I and then the rest of our team bring. We really try to vet stuff pretty well, and we bring sort of an analytical and an interpretive perspective that I think a lot of channels lack.
Yeah, and I think that's important because in the defense of most folks, it's real easy to get caught up in a confirmation bias, if you will. I mean, these things show up, and it fits what you would reasonably think is the correct narrative. However, it doesn't always exactly stand up to scrutiny. I think you've had that experience too as a lawyer, haven't you?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. And I know over at Ben's channel, they talk about waking up twice. You wake up once, and you start to question sort of the paradigm that you're presented with, and then you wake up again, and you start to question what those that have been woken up are coming up with. And I think that's a situation that we got going on here right now with this TR3B patent stuff. I mean, we looked up the patent, and it's bizarre. There's a lot of kind of weird circumstances surrounding it, and why don't we maybe share some of those peculiar instances that we discovered with this patent?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's an important thing to do because, for example, this whole thing started out with several postings online about this TR3B patent, and right here, as you can see, is a YouTube search, if you will, for number of hits on TR3B patent videos. And right now, let's refresh.
Yeah, we're at like over 1,000 videos on it or something.
Yeah, 1,040 videos.
That's crazy.
I mean, it started out this morning when I checked it. It was 929. So this is kind of a viral issue, and I think people probably need to step back and examine some of the elements surrounding it. I think, as you brought out, Adrian, it is clearly related to the Belgian UFO. The patent here, pull up the patent. It's not a patent, and it's a patent application. Would you like to address the difference on that?
Oh yeah, so that there's a big distinction between those two. A patent application, any lunatic can file a patent application, and it'll be recorded with the United States, with the United States government, and very few of those, I think it's something like 30 to 40% of patent applications ever reach full patent status, just because they lack the requisite design and the requisite information to actually create a patent. So anybody anywhere can create a patent for anything, create an application for a patent for anything. And that's what we have here. So this is not a patent. This is an application for a patent, which is a big distinction. And I'm glad you brought up the late 1980s Belgium UFO wave, because if you remember that iconic image of the black triangle that came out of that UFO flap, was kind of the impetus for the idea of the TR3B. And ever since then, it would be very curious that a patent filed in 2004 or 2006. No, it was filed in 2004. It was published in 2006.
Right.
That there would be over 2 decades discrepancy between the patent technology and the original sightings.
Well, you're absolutely correct, and we'll come back to a couple other details here, but along those same lines. For example, the TR3B was allegedly part of the Aurora program, which was the follow-on program to the Lockheed SR-71 Blackbird. Okay, the SR-71, as we can see here on this in Wikipedia entry, it went out. They retired those in 98, 99. So logically, when we step back now to the patent, the patent application was only filed in 2004, so it stands to reason, I know from my background, that there would necessarily be an operational replacement for the SR-71 prior to it ever being retired. So that's a question that one has to ponder. In addition,
and I think that question, coming from somebody with your intelligence and defense background, that carries a lot of credence and a lot of weight. It is unusual for, like you said, a patent to be filed many years after the replacement vehicle for the SR-71 was retired.
Yeah, they're again pointing out the fact that it's not a patent at all. It's just an application.
Right. It's an application. Yeah, right.
So the patent would necessarily have come later, if it came at all, which I see no evidence that it did.
Right, and maybe we can talk quickly about some of the research we did into the author of the patent and some of the other patents that he's done. I mean, sure. This guy has filed patents for all kinds of crazy non-existent technologies. I mean, what was it, a magnetic wormhole generator or something?
Yeah, a fellow by the name of, Professor Eliot's Bookshelf, his website, and he asks the question, who is John Quincy St. Clair? And points out that around 2000, a lot of mysterious actually properly patent applications began to surface. And some had strange names like Photon Spacecraft and the Chi Energy, or Key, actually, I guess it is, Energy Amplifier. And you go down, I'm scrolling down the page here, as you can see, there's a lot of interesting items. Here's one thing to point out. What is strange about this application is the way St. Clair segues into bizarre stories such as, at the beginning of the 20th century, a man's parents were dying of tuberculosis. With their permission, he placed them in their beds on weighing scales. When each one passed away, each scale registered a drop in mass equal to 0.071 kilograms. And I'm going to stop right there. Why would you do a decimal point kilograms when it's more scientifically efficient to say grams? Right.
Well, and I also think that his, quote, patent applications lack the specificity that you need to actually get a patent.
Right.
Which is probably why no patents ever issued for these technologies that he's claiming he came up with. In particular, he quotes a large number of strange mathematical equations, and I welcome the audience to investigate that further. Neither of us are a mathematician, But I know that when you file a patent, when you are overviewing the equations related to nature. So a good example would be quoting an equation for the necessary airflow to raise an aircraft into the air based on airfoil design and stuff. That's a mathematical equation describing nature and how it's going to interact with your device that you are trying to invent, the airplane. But to actually get a patent, you need to explain in engineering principles and design principles how you're going to take advantage of that natural equation to achieve a new, a new type of concept, a patentable invention, which this application, and we have to reiterate that again, this application does not do.
Right.
So even assuming all of his bizarre mathematics are correct, he still does not conjure up the engineering principles that you would need to actually get a patent, which is why I guess it remains in the application status over the last 20 years.
Right, and that's really important to remember, because some of the reports that are coming out right now are alleging that these are granted patents, when in fact they are not. Yeah, you or I could put together the necessary paperwork according to the information that the patent office will happily send you, and we could create patent applications for a system that weaves baskets underwater.
Right. And as ludicrous as that invention might be, and it might never ever be granted an actual patent, it still would have a public record that you could search on Google Patents, for example.
Sure, absolutely, because it is a public record. But let's transition now a little more. Actually, there's a whole other aspect of this that was discovered, and it's about, again, trying to answer the question of who this fellow is. So we looked up the address in Puerto Rico that is listed on the patent application. And very fascinating. Here's an image of the street view of the gated community in Puerto Rico. It's very, very high scale, or high end. This is not a low rent district here, and actually exists in a very exclusive area, and so exclusive that the next door neighbor, 52 Kings Court, apartment 3A, his property is listed in Sotheby's International Realty. And for those of you who are aware, that's not a small operation. And we can see that the beachfront on Kings Court, they're asking $850,000. What do you make of that, Adrian? This
yeah, it just adds a whole other element to the bizarreness of this whole story that's growing out there and becoming viral. I mean, so here we have this millionaire, supposedly hyper inventor. I think you shared an article with me that referred to him as a hyper inventor, where he's inventing wormhole technology and stuff in his basement. He also was a millionaire, and then we were not able to find any personal information about this individual. And I found that very peculiar in that if he's this millionaire super inventor, why can't we find any information on him? We discussed that perhaps it's a fictitious name, filing sort of just bizarre artificial patent applications, and is creating a name for himself that I worry our community might be kind of abusing. I don't think some of our community has vetted this individual and his work sufficiently enough to create sort of the viral explosion of attention that this has gotten.
Right. And it's definitely taking off, and that begs a whole bunch of questions as to whether it's intentional disinformation. What's really going on here? It's hard to say. But then that opens up the door to some other issues, and that's that concerns something called black patents.
Yes, and this is something I was unaware of until you and your unique background shared this with me. This is a very fascinating concept that I think will play a big role in our analysis of this.
Yeah, the long story short is if you come up with a sensitive, what the government considers sensitive invention, they have the authority, and they will gag you. They will declare it to be a black patent, and it will not see the light of day publicly. And this Law 360 article from 2005, U.S. secrecy orders curtail patents on private inventions, and those have increased steadily in recent years. In 1999, only 18 private U.S. citizens had their inventions gagged under government secrecy orders. However, in the past year, the figure has risen to 61. So this is from 2005. You can imagine what we're dealing with now. And the authority for that falls under the Invention Secrecy Act of 1951. Okay, so what that basically means is that the government can step out and grab your information and tell you and throw a black cover over it, so to speak, and it's forever. Now, technically, they have to renew it every year, except in the case where there is a national emergency declared. And I think, as you pointed out earlier, Adrian, that we are constantly under a state of national emergency and have been since 9/11.
Yes, exactly. So all of these Patriot Act, black patent laws, I mean, these have been constantly in effect for, well, pretty much the majority of my life. Mm-hmm. And that's important to think about because the black patent aspect of this, in regards to this John St. Clair individual, this should not have been released. If this is actually the patent for the TR3B, right, this should not have been released. Right. If it's America's most cutting-edge stealth fighter, this would clearly fall under a black patent. And we've existed under this national emergency state for over a decade, which I think lends a lot of evidence to the fact that this is just a lunatic who looked at the Belgium UFO flap, looked at the Black Triangle UFO, and then created sort of a nonsensical patent application that then was never approved over the last 15 years or whatever.
And in support of what you're saying, even if his patent application replicated the technology of something like a TR3B, that would have been cloaked in secrecy as well.
Yes, exactly. Yes, that's a good point.
Yeah. So there are a lot of indicators to suggest that this so-called patent application is without substance, for lack of a better thing to say.
Yeah, and I think it's important that we reiterate that we are not saying the TR3B does not exist.
Right.
We're not saying that, and we're not saying that the TR3B explains the Black Triangle UFO phenomenon that we've seen for many, many, many decades,
right,
including the Belgium flap, which it could be black operation technology. It could also be extraterrestrial. It could be any number of things. We are just saying that this patent is not holding water under a critical peer review.
Mm-hmm. And it's just, there again, like reiterating the advice, I guess you will, if you will, for folks to use some critical analysis. We really try to do that, believe it or not. And so we work really hard to try to present supportable topics and always open to conversation. And that's really the whole thrust of this, is try to engage folks in a reasoned discourse and approach these issues Does that sound about right?
No, that is totally right, and that's why we encourage individuals to, in the comment section, investigate these issues further, provide their opinion. But from our perspective, and this is from a practicing attorney and a former intelligence and defensive operator, this is not holding water to us. And who knows what the black triangles are? But I don't think it's this.
Yeah.
It's
yeah.
I don't think it's John St. Clair living in Puerto Rico.
Right. And in a very worst case scenarios, it requires a good deal more confirmation than what we're seeing.
Absolutely. Yeah. So we're just trying to keep a check on some of these channels releasing some of this information. We provided some interesting avenues for the audience to explore, and we hope you do, and we're looking forward to discussing them further.